Hey guys, recipe for Wonka Vite. Here it is, cried Mr. Wonka, standing at the end of the bed and holding high in one hand a little bottle. The most valuable bottle of pills in the world. And that, by the way, he said, giving Grandma Georgina a saucy glance, is why I haven't taken any myself. They are far too valuable to waste on me. He held the bottle out over the bed. The three old ones sat up, stretched their scrawny necks, trying to catch a glimpse of the pills inside. Charlie and Grandpa Joe also came forward to look. So did Mr. and Mrs. Bucket. The label said, Wonka Vite. Each pill will make you younger by exactly 20 years. Caution! Do not take more than the amount recommended by Mr. Wonka. They could all see the pills through the glass. They were brilliant yellow, shimmering and quivering inside the bottle. Vibrating is perhaps a better word. They were vibrating so rapidly that each pill became a blur and you couldn't see its shape. You could only see its color. You got the impression that there was something very small but incredibly powerful, something not quite of this world, locked up inside them and fighting to get out. They're wriggling, said Grandma Georgina. I don't like things that wriggle. How do we know they won't go on wriggling inside us after we've swallowed them? Like those Mexican jumping beans of Charlie's I swallowed a couple years back. You remember that, Charlie? So here's Willy Wonka. He's holding up that bottle of pills. I told you not to eat them, Grandma. They went on jumping about inside me for a month, said Grandma Georgina. I couldn't sit still. If I'm going to eat one of those pills, I jolly well want to know what's in it first, said Grandma Josephine. I don't blame you, said Mr. Wonka, but the recipe is extremely complicated. Wait a minute. I've got it written down somewhere. He started digging around in the pockets of his coattails. I know it's here somewhere, he said. I can't have lost it. I keep all my most valuable, important things in these pockets. The trouble is, there's such a lot of them. He started emptying the pockets and placing the contents on the bed. A homemade catapult, a yo-yo, a trick fried egg made of rubber, a slice of salami, a tooth with a filling in it, a stink bomb, a packet of itching powder. It must be here, it must be, it must, he kept muttering. I put it away so carefully. Aha, here it is. He unfolded a crumpled piece of paper, smoothed it out, held it up, and began to read as follows. Recipe for making Wonka Vite. Take a block of finest chocolate weighing 1 ton, or 20 sackfuls of broken chocolate, whichever is the easier. Place the chocolate in very large cauldron and melt over red-hot furnace. When melted, lower the heat slightly so as not to burn the chocolate, but keep it boiling. Now add the following in precisely the order given, stirring well all the time and allowing each item to dissolve before adding the next. The hoof of a manticore. The trunk and the suitcase of an elephant. The yolks of 3 eggs from a wiffle bird. A wart from a warthog. The horn of a cow, it must be a loud horn. The front tail of a cockatrice. 6 ounces of sprung from a young slime scraper. 2 hares and 1 rabbit from the head of a hippocampus. The beak of a red-breasted wilbatross. A corn from the toe of a unicorn. The 4 tentacles of a quadrupus. The hip and the and the pot of the hippopotamus, the snout of a froghopper, a mole from a mole, the hide and the seek of a spotted whangdoodle, the whites of 12 eggs from a tree squeak, the 3 feet of a snozzwanger. If you can get 3 feet, 1 yard'll do. The square root of a South American abacus, the fangs of a viper. It must be a Vindscreen viper. The chest and the drawers of a wild grouse. When all the above are thoroughly dissolved, boil for a further 27 days, but do not stir. At the end of this time, all liquid will have evaporated, and there will be left in the bottom of the cauldron only a brown lump the size of a football beak. This open with a hammer, and in the very center of it you will find a small round pill. This pill is a Wonkavite. That is the end of chapter 14. Chapter 15 is rather long, and I will read half of it, okay? And then we will stop and let you draw your pictures, and then we'll have our meeting on Zoom, okay? So, chapter 15 is entitled Goodbye, Georgina. Uh-oh. When Mr. Wonka had finished reading the recipe, he carefully folded the paper and put it back into his pocket. A very, very complicated mixture, he said. So can you wonder it took me so long to get it just right? He held the bottle up high and gave it a little shake, and the petals rattled loudly inside, like glass beads. Now, sir, he said, offering the bottle first to Grandpa George, will you take one pill or two? Will you solemnly swear, said Grandpa George, that it will do what you say it will and nothing else? Mr. Wonka placed his free hand on his heart. I swear it, he said. Charlie edged forward. Grandpa Joe came with him. The two of them always stayed close together. Please excuse me for asking, Charlie said, but are you really absolutely sure you've got it quite right? Whatever makes you ask a funny question like that, said Mr. Wonka. I was thinking of the gum you gave to Violet Beauregard, Charlie said. So that's what's bothering you, cried Mr. Wonka. But don't you understand, my dear boy, that I never did give that gum to Violet? She snatched it without permission, and I shouted, stop, don't, spit it out. But the silly girl took no notice of me. Now Wonkavite is altogether different. I am offering these pills to your grandparents. I am recommending them. And when taken in accordance with my instructions, they are as safe as sugar candy. Of course they are, cried Mr. Bucket. What are you waiting for, all of you? An extraordinary change had come over Mr. Bucket since he had entered the chocolate room. Normally, he was a pretty timid sort of person, a lifetime devoted to screwing caps on to the tops of toothpaste tubes in a toothpaste factory had turned him into a rather shy and quiet man. But in the sight of the marvelous chocolate factory had made his spirits soar. What is more, this business of the pills seems to have given him a terrific kick. Listen, he cried, going up to the edge of the bed. Mr. Wonka's offering you a new life. Grab it while you can. It's a delicious sensation, Mr. Wonka said, and it's very quick. You lose a year a second. Exactly 1 year falls away from you every second that goes by. He stepped forward and placed the bottle of pills gently in the middle of the bed. So here you are, my dears. Help yourselves. Come on, cried all the Oompa Loompas together. Come on, old friends, and do what's right. Come make your lives as bright as bright. Just take a dose of this delight, this heavenly magic dynamite. You can't go wrong, you must go right. It's Willy Wonka's Wonkavite. This was too much for the old people in the bed. All three of them made a dive for the bottle. 6 scrawny hands shot out and started scrabbling to get a hold of it. Grandma Georgina got it. She gave a grunt of triumph, unscrewed the cap, and tipped all the little brilliant yellow pills onto the blanket on her lap. She cupped her hands around them so the others couldn't reach out and snatch them. All right, she shouted excitedly, counting them quickly. There's 12 pills here. That's 6 for me and 3 for each of you. Hey, that's not fair, shrilled Grandma Josephine. It's 4 for each of us. 4 each is right, cried Grandpa George. Come on, Georgina, hand over my share. Mr. Wonka shrugged his shoulders and turned his back on them. He hated squabbles. He hated it when people got grabby and selfish. Let them fight it out amongst themselves, he thought, and he walked away. He walked slowly down towards the chocolate waterfall. It was an unhappy truth, he told himself, that nearly all people in the world behave badly when there is something really big at stake. Money is the thing they fight over most. But these pills were bigger than money. They could do things for you no amount of money could ever do. They were worth at least $1 million a pill. And he knew plenty of rich men who would gladly pay that much in order to become 20 years younger. He reached the riverbank below the waterfall. There's a picture of him next to the waterfall. Chocolate waterfall at that. And he stood there gazing at the great gush and splash of melted chocolate pouring down. He had hoped the noise of the waterfall would drown the arguing voices of the old grandparents in the bed. But it didn't. Even with his back to them, he still couldn't help hearing most of what they were saying. "I got them first," Grandma Georgina was shouting, "so they're mine to share out." "No, they're not," shrilled Grandma Josephine. "He didn't give them to you. He gave them to all three of us. I want my share, and no one's going to stop me from getting it," yelled Grandpa George. "Come on, woman, hand them over." Then came the voice of Grandpa Joe, cutting in sternly through the rubble. "Stop this at once," he ordered. "All three of you. You're behaving like savages." "You keep out of this, Joe, and mind your own business," said Grandma Josephine. "Now you be careful, Josie," Grandpa Joe went on. "4 is too many for one person anyway." "That's right," Charlie said. "Please, Grandma, why don't you just take 1 or 2 each like Mr. Wonka said? That'll leave some for Grandpa Joe and Mother and Father." "Yes," cried Mr. Bucket. "I'd love one." "Oh, wouldn't it be wonderful," said Mrs. Bucket, "to be 20 years younger and not have aching feet anymore? Couldn't you spare just one for each of us, Mother?" "I'm afraid not," said Grandma Georgina. "These pills are specially reserved for us 3 in the bed. Mr. Wonka said so." "I want my share," shouted Grandpa George. "Come on, Georgina, dish them out." "Hey, let me go, you brute," cried Grandma Georgina. "You're hurting me. Ow! All right, I'll share them out if you'll stop twisting my arm." "That's better. Here's 4 for Josephine and 4 for George and 4 for me." "Good," said Grandpa George. "Now who's got some water?" Without looking around, Mr. Wonka knew that the 3 Oompa Loompas would be running to the bed with 3 glasses of water. Oompa Loompas were always ready to help. There was a brief pause, and then, "Well, here goes," cried Grandpa George. "Young and beautiful, that's what I'll be," shouted Grandma Josephine. "Farewell, old age," cried Grandma Georgina. "All together now. Down the hatch." Then there was silence. Mr. Wonka was itching to turn around and look, but he forced himself to wait. Out of the corner of one eye, he could see a group of Oompa Loompas all motionless, their eyes fixed intently in the direction of the big bed over by the elevator. Then Charlie's voice broke the silence. "Wow!" he was shouting. "Just look at that! It's incredible! I can't believe it!" Grandpa Joe was yelling. "They're getting younger and younger. They really are! Just look at Grandpa George's hair." And that's where we'll stop. We'll start the rest of this chapter on Monday to see what happens to the old people on the bed. In the meantime, draw me a picture of what happened, your favorite part, or what you think is going to happen to the old people that took this pill. And don't forget, write out a little thing with your picture if you can, and wash your hands. See you in a bit.